Hey, everybody. I'm here again with Amy Hawk today, and we had actually set up to talk about something else today, but the Epstein thing keeps coming back, and we both just thought this is actually important to talk about. Amy, why don't you tell us what you told me earlier about this?
I just think we're at a critical moment right now, not just in our nation's history, but really for the church in America that has supported Donald Trump. And so we need to talk about this. This is an opportunity for those who have been cheering him on, enabling him, defending him to jump off of that Trump train. And I hope they do.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I felt. It's like at some point, I think people get numb to the fact that here's another thing, and I just think we can't do that. What I keep saying to myself is when is it going to be enough? When are these people who claim to be voting as Christians and supporting Donald Trump as Christians, when are they going to see enough? And if we could have said years ago that these emails were going to come out today, and that Christians across America would just kind of turn away from it, and just like, no big deal, or pretend to ignore it or whatever. I don't think I would have believed it. Would you?
No, I never would have believed it, but I've been saying that all along. I mean, I've been saying that since the Access Hollywood tapes came out. I've been saying it since he mocked the disabled journalist. It defies all reasonable explanation for somebody who claims to be walking in truth, walking in light, and walking with Christ to be supporting this man.
Right. And so we're gonna actually share the three emails that came out today, and I'm going to explain why I think these are important, and they tell us some very important things. And I also, the reason Amy and I both, I think, are kind of like in the same boat with how we think about this right now is we've both written books that talk about some of this stuff. Amy, you can talk a little bit about what you wrote in your book, and my first book was called Mega Seduction: Resisting the Debasement of the Christian Conscience. Resisting the debasement of the Christian conscience. When I wrote that in 2020, this is what I was talking about. And here we are now with so many Christians excusing what we're hearing today.
Exactly. And my book, I started writing it in 2016, and the subtitle is How Evangelicals Betrayed Jesus for Power, because even back then I saw the betrayal of evangelicals to support and defend and even at times celebrate an abuser of women who
Right.
confessed to sexual assault on tape for all to hear. So I have always considered that evangelicals were responsible for the elevation of Donald Trump, and I have always thought that they need to be held accountable to that, because when we say we're walking with Jesus, people need to be able to trust us that we have some measure of integrity, some measure of dignity, some measure of caring about women and children. So this is where it comes down to, we really need to make a choice if we are going to say that we are following Christ or if we are going to say that we are following Trump.
Right.
It's one or the other. Choose today who you're going to serve.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm going to quickly jump into these three emails just so people know what we're talking about if they haven't heard. I'm guessing a lot of people will have heard this already today. And our thing is always, when are Christians going to start caring about this? But this first email is from 2011, and it's between Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey sent her, and this is when he's already been to jail for that first time he was convicted, but now things are heating up again. There's more investigations happening, and what he said is, I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. And then there's a victim's name, spent hours at my house with him. he has never once been mentioned. What people will say is like, this is a fake email. This isn't real, or but it's like, no, this is 2011. These two people are the two co-conspirators in this thing. Why would they, in 2011, when Trump is on TV, he's not a presidential candidate, why would they make up something about Trump talking to each
Mm,
other? It
good
just, I
point.
mean, I find it plausible that this happened.
Well, not only that, but so if what we knew about Donald Trump and his the surrounding circumstances of his life were that he was this upstanding citizen who treated women with respect, well, then we might have reason to question the emails. But this
Mm,
is a man who has repeatedly called women names, dog, pig, low IQ, who has
mm,
confessed to grabbing women, who is an adjudicated sexual assailant, who has had more than 26 women come forward to say that he molested them or assaulted them. And I sometimes people forget about this, but I have it documented in my book, in the Judas Effect, that he is on video talking to young girls as they go up an escalator, asking them
mm,
how old they are. And I think they said they were, 14, 15. And he said, well, I'm going to be dating you someday. So he's
mm.
already in that frame of mind of um, petitioning very, very young girls. And this isn't
Right.
just one. There are two documented instances of him uh, doing something like this. So when you put all that together, you have a fuller picture of the type of man and the type of person that he is. You'd have to really close your eyes shut tight to not be able to connect the dots here.
Right, exactly. And then he's got his own words. The thing is, like, with pretty much everything I've written about Trump over the years, I've often just used his own words. So in that New York Magazine article from 2002, that was this article about Jeffrey Epstein before all of this became public. Trump said, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." So it's like, with his own words, he's talking about this stuff. And back then in 2002, it's jokey, jokey.
Mm-hmm.
He's not saying Jeff is kind of a creep like he says now. Oh, he was a creep, so I distanced myself. No,
Mm-hmm.
he's saying, he's making jokes about it. In a Howard Stern interview, he's talking about the Miss USA pageant and the Miss Teen USA pageant, that he owns those. And he says, well, I'll tell you, the funniest is that before a show, I'll go backstage and everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant. Therefore, I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure everything is good. The dresses, is everything okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that, which fits right in with the Access Hollywood tape. When you're a star, they
Mm-hmm.
let you do it. I mean, this is a pattern in his own words. And so, what I want to ask Christians who hear these emails today and still support Trump is, if people say these things about him, if there's evidence of these things about him, and if he says in his own words that this is the kind of person he is, what more do we need to see? So now I'm not making an accusation here that I can't prove about what he actually did, for instance, with the girl in Jeffrey Epstein's apartment that Epstein says he spent hours with her. I don't know. But I'm saying he denies even knowing that Epstein was involved in this kind of stuff. And it's so clear that Trump knew, which is
Mm-hmm.
what the second email is about. So in the second email, Trump is president, it's 2019, and Epstein is writing to Michael Wolff. And he says a victim's name, and this, I think he's talking about, Virginia Giuffre, according to Carolyn Levitt. But anyway, victim's name, Mar-a-Lago, and then something else redacted. And then Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. So this is that whole thing where Epstein is saying, of course, Trump knew that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were recruiting girls from Mar-a-Lago, because he asked Ghislaine to stop at some point when it became a problem. And now
Mhm.
Trump spins that nowadays by saying, "Oh, he was just hiring them away from me, and it made me angry." And it's like, but it's very clear from the context, at least Jeffrey Epstein is saying. And again, I don't know why he would here. He could be lying at this point because it's 2019, and Trump is president. So I put a little less stock in this, but it to me it seems pretty clear. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that he's been trying to cover this up since he found out that his name was all over the files. And I think that he is going crazy, tweeting out for people, forget about the Epstein files, with all these exclamation points. And then today I noticed that he sent something out that said, if you are a Republican and you believe this, you are dumb and stupid. So
Right.
he's doing his typical cult leader thing, which is he's going to try to shame his base, his followers, into
Mhm.
not believing the truth. And so just by his reaction, that should tell you that the validity of these emails that have come out. If he wasn't
Right.
bothered or not having any response whatsoever, then that would be a different story. But he is dramatically trying to get people's attention away from these emails.
Right. And that brings up something that I think all the time about this stuff, is that what Trump supporters will often do is this sort of bait and switch, where it's like, well, he didn't do it. Surely he didn't do it. And then it's like, well, here, this kind of proves that he did it. And it's like, well, you can't prove it in a court of law. You can't file criminal charges. This isn't enough evidence for that. And it's like, when did politics become about, well, you can't prove in a court of law that my candidate is, a sexual abuser? And of course, that has been proven in a court of law too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like and then you do prove it, and then you're like, well, what does it matter? It was a bad jury. The jury hates it. You know what I mean? But it's like, I'm just asking people to say, just think about this. If this were your friend, for instance, a friend
Mm-hmm.
that you're learning something about, and you would see
Mm-hmm.
these things and there was nothing political involved, would you kind of look at your friend differently and say, oh, my friend's lying to me? My friend's been lying to me forever about not knowing about this.
Mm-hmm.
It seems pretty clear to me. But the one that disturbed me the most, I think, I mean, they all disturb me, but the third email, this is from 2015. So this is before Trump was president. It's when he was running for the Republican nomination, and so he's about to participate in a debate with other Republican candidates. And at this point, he was still not. I don't know if he was the front runner. Maybe he was, but Michael Wolff, again, this reporter, wrote a thing saying, to Jeffrey Epstein, saying, I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. And Jeffrey Epstein responds, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Which is like incredible to see this in an email, that Epstein is saying he thinks he has the possibility maybe to even craft an answer for Donald Trump about him. And so you can see a little bit about how this kind of stuff. And Michael Wolff is this supposed reporter who's written these books, and kind of a questionable guy, which now I really think he's questionable when I see his response. His response to Epstein is, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. But I'm just looking at this and I'm going, wow. Um, there's two things about this that I find just fascinating. One is that both of these guys are assuming Trump knows all about this, and has been on the jet, has been in the House, and if he denies this sort of stuff, then Epstein is going to have leverage over him. And that's exactly, that's how they're talking about it. I've never heard somebody talk so clear. Maybe it's just the people I hang around with. The idea of generating a debt by helping someone to lie, is just like, and I just want to ask Christians, does this not bother you?
Right.
When you see this sort of thing? And how long are you going to keep just turning away from the evidence? We're now talking about a guy who, at minimum, according to these emails, absolutely knew what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein and is participating in a cover-up. And he's leading a cover-up, and he's requiring his party to participate in the cover-up of this information.
I think that's a really good question, what you said about requiring his party to cover up for him. How long, Christians, do you want to cover up for Donald Trump? I mean, this is really what it boils down to. So this is a cover up. It's been covered up. Whether you believe he was in cahoots with Jeffrey or just knew what was going on, either way, this is a cover up. So if you continue to associate and defend him and enable him, you are participating in that cover up to keep him elevated. And so that is something that you are going to have to reckon with Jesus, because all throughout the scriptures, Jesus says he does not want wickedness covered up. He wants it exposed. And in fact, in 2 John 1:11, it says, if you give your greeting to a wicked man, you are partnering with them in that evil. So the stakes are really high right now. And this is an opportunity for Christians everywhere to really get quiet with the Lord. Ask him, what is the most, if you say you're following Jesus, then the decision you make right now had best reflect him. If you're a disciple of Christ, sitting at the feet of Christ, then whatever decision you make right now, you need to hear straight from him. What is the best reflection of you? And I know from reading the scriptures that women and children were safe with Jesus. He even says in Matthew 18, if you hurt one of my little ones, it'd be best if you had a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea. That's how strongly he feels about victims of abuse, being abused. So you're going to have to sit with that.
And I'd like to get past this whole thing that somehow when it comes to politics, just anything goes because we're serving God by electing this man. It's just so. The last thing I want to touch on, I mentioned it earlier, is that. So I listened to a video between that Sarah Longwell and Andrew Eggers from the Bulwark did today. And I like these guys. They get it right. Sarah Longwell was the first person that I heard today who was saying exactly what I was thinking, where she was saying, he's talking about having leverage over Trump. This is a big deal. This is explosive, and she was the first one that I heard to say it so clearly the way I saw it. And then she asked Andrew Egger, how do some of these Christians put up with this? How do they go along with this? And I just want you to hear Andrew Egger's response here, because I think it's exactly what Amy and I have been warning about in our books, about the way that our conscience just gets destroyed little by little by going along with it. So listen to how he puts this.
And this is true, I think, of a lot of Christians, not just who are in positions of power, but just sort of like who are Republican and have, been on, strapped to the Donald Trump rocket ship now for a decade, where they just have this view that politics is always gross, politics is always a grubby thing. It's not quite like the main thing, and like the big thing in politics is if you're gonna like play as a Christian, the main thing is just like stick with the Republican Party, because the Republican Party is not hostile to religious liberty. It's not hostile to Christianity, like we believe the Democratic Party to be, like the Republic, like Donald Trump. That was a big theme for him. Anytime he would talk to believers on the campaign trail last year, is like, Democrats are coming to ruin your lives, and I'm the guy who's standing in the way, right? And so like, from that starting point, from politics is always gross, but like we need this fighter, you can rationalize a fair amount, right? And like the problem is, once you start doing those rationalizations, it becomes that much easier to do the next rationalization and the next rationalization and the next rationalization. And now we're a decade in, and you're looking around, you're like, holy shit, I am now sort of like being asked to give like at least my tacit, but maybe actually my active like support to trying to sort of like sweep this elite pedophilia scandal under the rug. And like sometimes that's just the way people don't turn into drug addicts like sort of out on the street corner in like an afternoon, right? It's like a slow process of accommodation by which your life gets worse and worse and worse through a series of bad but like plausible and reasonable seeming to you at the time decisions, right? And then suddenly you look around and your life is like in shambles around you. I think that has happened politically to a lot of Christians.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what this reminds me of, and I write about this in my book too, is how when you get sucked into a cult, it's always under the guise of something good, a good agenda, a morally righteous agenda. Even with, Scientology, anything, that's how they get you in. And then gradually, as you're in it, more and more comes out about how corrupt the leader is. This is how it works. And so there has to come a point where people jump ship, and where they say, okay, this guy, this is too, I cannot go along with this. And I feel like once people hit that point where they say, I'm not going to go along with this, whatever they witness, abuse, or normally it would be they find out they're a felon, but that didn't even do it in this situation. But there will come a time when they jump ship.
One thing I believe from the bottom of my heart about all of this is that 20 years from now, no one is going to claim, no one is going to admit to have been on board the Trump train. No one. They're going to say, at best, well, I voted for him because you should have seen how terrible the other people were, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But for the most, what they're going to be saying, but I despised him. And a lot of people are going to lie about having voted for him 20 years from now. I absolutely believe that. And I'm just saying to Christians who are still trying to make sense of all this, still trying to make this work, to keep supporting this party that's now actively engaged in this cover-up, actively. If you're still trying to support that, life is a lot better over here, where we can actually just like look at reality, tell the truth, say this is not good, and not have to just cover it all with a bunch of BS that Caroline Levitt is feeding us to help us get through the day.
I want to say something about that too, and that's that God calls us to walk in the light. We should never be walking in this darkness where we are scrambling to try to make something make sense. God has never called us to do that for any reason. We have to just walk in the light, walk in truth, whether it's politically convenient for some of us or not. And I have said from the beginning, this is a test. God has been testing to see who would be willing to stick with truth and walk in his light, even if it meant, not getting what they want power-wise, and who would be willing to go along with darkness, go along with lies, keep covering up for political power. Because at the end of the day, that is the corruption, and that was the test. And this
Right.
is an opportunity to say, I choose Jesus, I choose the light. I am not going to let this man deceive me anymore.
Yeah, right. Amen to that. And I think we'll just end on that note then. And I'll just make an appeal to people who are listening. Like if you still are supporting this stuff, here's another off ramp. I feel like Trump has given his supporters hundreds of off ramps in the last 10
Yeah.
years. Here's another one. Here's another off ramp. And I hope some people take it because this is going nowhere good.
Right.
So
This is
thanks,
a huge
Amy.
one. This is the one to take.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for being here.
You
And
bet.
thanks, everybody, for listening.